Okay, I'd like to give you some basic tips when using your X-Loom, what will make it easier to use it. The placement of the yarn can be important. If you are going, and I'll have my skein in hand, if you are going counterclockwise like you see me do, you will want your yarn on the right side. This will keep you from having tangling underneath. If you are working clockwise, you want your yarn on the left side. Again, this prevents tangling. If you're working a flat panel, and let's say you're working on a table like this, then you want it slightly above and in front of you. Okay? Slightly above and in front. And that should keep it fairly out of the way from getting tangled. If you are using your lap, now I find that using a table is not as easy for me, but if you are one who is required to use the table to loom knit, I would suggest you have a table that's at least chest high. Okay, that's chest high for me, and that makes it easier to see. Okay, so if you're going to work on a table format, you want the table to be higher for you. Okay, I personally find knitting this loom easiest on my lap. Okay, but if you're working at a table, have the yarn above and in front. If you're working in your lap, you just need it in front of you. The higher the better, so if you have like a little coffee table or something in front of you and you're sitting there knitting, you can have it sitting on the coffee table, but in front of you is the best when it comes to knitting flat. Alright, now I'm going to kind of show you how I do knitting on my lap. Okay, so the bigger one is nice. It has more stability. It covers more area. Alright, so what you want to do is you find that when you knit, you can knit easiest like this. Okay, and it's where you can stabilize the loom between your legs as you knit. And it actually makes it easier. You twist it around. And what I find on these corner, you'll normally see me do a tip up knit, but on the actual wedge pegs, I tend to do a tip down and a toss over. Okay, and that makes it a little easier to do that. Then you move it between your legs again, and you knit. It stabilizes it and it also makes it a lot easier to work with. This is how I prefer to do work on the X-Loom. Okay, and you move it and you keep going all the way around. And this I just find is the easiest way to do it, and it's a shame I really can't film this way more often, but it does make it easier to do it this way. So that is actually how you go in and have your two options on the smoothest and easiest way to work with a garment on the X-Loom. When working two at a time, I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I will explain how to do that in another video, and how you need to place your yarn. But as for starting with the basics, this is how I find it's easiest to work with it when you're actually doing it, and the other ways of placing your yarn and what's going to keep you from getting less tangled with your wedges, because the wedges are a wonderful thing. They can help you increase, decrease, shape, do a whole bunch of stuff. They can also get in the way of tangling up your yarn, and the trick is to find the best way to place your yarn so that it doesn't tangle up, and that is where I found it worked best. So that's some basics on how to try working with the loom, but keep in mind this is an entirely new loom. Your body's going to have an entirely different feel for it. It can take up to anywhere from 3 to 4 projects to get a feel for this loom. So just because you start working on it and you get frustrated with it, don't give up. Keep going for at least 3 to 4 projects and then decide whether you're done with it or not. But after I found had finished my fourth project, I was getting a real feel for it, okay? So keep that in mind when using this loom. Okay, when setting up your wedges, you may end up with the preconceived notion that you have to have every prong, as I call it, the same when you pull it out. That's not the case. Let's say you're going to do a 44 peg sock, alright, in the middle. Well, if you divide 44 by 4, you get 11. Well, your prongs are supposed to have even numbers on them, okay? Well, what you have to do with that odd number is add or subtract 1, alright? So, I usually do my shorter ones this way, longer. It's up to you, but I would always suggest having your longer sections across from each other and your shorter sections across from each other, okay? And sometimes you may want the 2 longer sections over here, the 2 shorter sections here. It's entirely up to you. I find on average that if you put the longer sections across from each other and the shorter sections across from each other, it works really well when you start to decrease, because your first decrease can be on the longer section to get everything back down to all even, and then you can do all the 4 wedges to keep it even all the way down, okay? So since we'll just do the basis of 44, and so if you take it down 1 from 11, you have 10. So you want to do 2, 4, 6, 8, and then move that down because your wedges are 2, 10. And then you want to do 12 over here. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Alright. And then what I like to do is get my peg that's across from my starting peg and then count the next one. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That needs to be moved down 1. 12. Then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It can be moved a little bit forward. And as you see, there is a section that's a little longer and a little shorter than the other, okay? And that's how you go in and you set that up. Now once you do a general setup, counting from, and you may want to mark these with a little black marker so that you have an easier way of going in and counting up, because that is the fastest way to do a setup rather than sitting there trying to individually count with the pegs. So any amount you need to use for your pegs, take that amount and divide it by 4 and either subtract or add to make the number even and then count out. Okay, let's say we want to do, I think 80 works fine, 88 works fine, 90 is 22.5. So you see that that one's off, and you'll have, I believe, 1 wedge that's going to be off if you did 90. Okay, so if we wanted to set it up for 90, you want one side to actually be 22. So I'll probably do my first starting off for being 22. So let's go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 20, it's 20. And we move our wedge, because remember our wedge is 22. And then we can do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. And then we move that down to 22. And then we'll have 24 for these. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. Okay, 24. Now, because it is a 0.5, you may have to go in and do 26 on a prong. Okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. You can start off with 24, and you can go in and add 24, 24, 22, and 22, and see what you get. You get 92. Okay, so actually you can take one prong down too. So you have 3 prongs that are where they're supposed to be and 1 prong off. And that's fine. You just keep in mind which one is off, and when you go to start doing, say, the crown of a hat, because 90 would work for a hat, you decrease this one the very first. And then you have them all even, and then you just decrease all the way down to 24. But that is how you go about setting up the X-Loom without it taking forever. Okay, so you may want to go in and mark where the beginning point is for your prong count out, and that way it'll make it easier for you to be able to calculate how many pegs you're using without having to go and individually count each one. You don't want to waste that kind of time, okay? But that's how you go about doing this, so that you know that you don't have to have all of the wedges exactly the same distance from each other from the center. You can have one set off so that you get the exact peg count you want. Alright, so that explains that, and I think we'll move on to some techniques. One of the first major shaping techniques you will learn on the X-Loom is how to do a wedge decrease. And wedge decreases are way easy. You can do them all at once before starting the row, so that all you have to do is knit the row. Okay. So this is how it goes. You're going to loosen the wedge up. Alright, and you're just going to push it down to the next corresponding pegs, or the next set of pegs, just like I did. So right there to right there. Tighten up the wedge so it's where it's supposed to be. And then you have these 2 stitches that are straggling back here, as you can see. So what you want to do with those is you want to take them off, and you want to place them on a wedge peg. Okay, so you have 2 you can decrease onto the wedge peg. So there you have just decreased. Now when you go and you do all of the wedges that you want like this, then what you do is when you get to the decrease, you knit both stitches over. Knit both stitches, so knit 2 together. And that is how you do a decrease on the X-Loom. Really easy. Okay, much easier than the increase, but this is part of shaping. So and when you want to know how to shape, you have to know how to decrease on this loom and increase on this loom. So this is how you decrease. Next I will show you how you increase. This is how you increase on the X-Loom. What you want to do is you want to knit your way to the first wedge peg. Alright, once you reach the first wedge peg, what you want to do is you want to take the previous stitch, which is your first notch, right behind the peg. See if I can get it to focus. Okay, you want to take the first stitch, getting this thing to focus, sorry. get that first stitch and pull it over. Do not release it. And then put the working yarn in front of the peg, and then place that stitch you just pulled right back to where it goes. Now your original stitch on the loom may get in the way, but you'll know your new stitch because it moves. Alright, there is my new stitch. So what you want to do is you want to take it off, and you want to place it on the previous peg that you have knitted. Alright, and then what you want to do is you want to knit the wedge pegs. This is what I call a wedge increase, okay? This full process. Alright, so you want to knit pegs 1 and 2 on the wedge. You want to go to the next available peg, and remember, when you do this twin knit, you want your working yarn on the inside. So what you want to do is you want to pick up your previous stitch, pick up that previous stitch, pull it forward, do not release it, move the working yarn in front, then take and place that stitch back, pick up your extra stitch and move it over to the previous peg, and then knit the stitch you just twin knitted. Okay, at this point you want to move your wedge out to the next available empty pegs, and then you're going to pick that stitch you created up on this peg, and you're going to move it over to that empty peg. You're going to pick that extra stitch up on that wedge peg, and you're going to move it over to the next available peg. And then what you can do is you can go in and you can snug up your stitches so that you have a nice smooth increase, okay? And that is how you increase on the X-Loom, okay? Okay, I want to show you how to do a drawstring cast on the X-Loom so that you know what that looks like. And then I'll show you how to do the drawstring bind off next. And this helps with shaping, particularly if you're going to do a sphere, or if you're going to have a flat bottom, like for a cylinder or a cone. That's how that's going to work the best. So you have your 24, and what you want to do is you want to wrap it behind. It's just going to be like a wrap in front, okay? If you want, you can do a wrap around the previous start peg and then weave in and out of your 24. Okay, so you do a usual weave just like you would a regular drawstring cast on. There's nothing different about it. Alright, you're going to knit over that first stitch, wrap around the front, knit over this stitch, wrap around the front, and as you see, you're starting to get a stitch on every peg. But now don't forget, you have parallel pegs. You could end up accidentally skipping one. You don't want to do that, because here is where you could end up skipping one and going to the next, and you don't. You want to make sure you go around the front of that one, because that is a peg that counts. Okay, we've made it back around now, and to set it in place you just want to do a row of knit, and you can either take this to the front or take this to the back, it doesn't matter on your working yarn, but you want to go around and knit a single row. Okay, and now we have it set into place, and that is how you do a drawstring cast on. Otherwise, there's not a lot different when working with this loom than working with a circular loom, except that you have these movable wedges. Okay, when you cast on, you treat it like you're following the perimeter of the loom. Okay, and that's what you need to keep in mind. You're going in a roundabout fashion. You're just doing it through an X rather than a circle. So I'm going to show you how to drawstring off the last 24 pegs for a smooth finish. What you want to do is skip that first stitch, knit the bottom stitch over, and pull the tail through. Skip, and knit, skip, and knit, skip, and knit all the way around. Okay, we're back around where we should be, and you're going to skip that peg and move to the next one, and that's going to give you where you can pull. Okay, you'll see where the longer section is. Alright, you're going to skip that one, and that should be your last one pulled off. And now you're just going to take the rest of the stitches off. You can do this with a sock as well but I don't like the extra bulk if you were to do this method. So for a sock, I mean, you can do this method, but I wouldn't. But this is how I do it for the stuffed animal, because it doesn't matter if there's a little bulky spot. You're not going to have to feel it, and you're not going to have to see it. And the last one. Okay. And pull through the bottom. Now, I'm going to show you the easy way to do this. Alright. Most of these have a certain length to them, okay? But you'll see where you finished. There's one that's longer in length than the others, and that's going to be this one here. Okay. If I can get it to focus. Okay, you see how these are a certain length and that one's longer, and it's just right above the tail? Well, you're going to pull it, and you're going to pull it from this side. Now, if you'd like to go the other way, you're going to pull from this side, but the direction I go counterclockwise, you're going to pull that side. So you pull that side first, and then you pull your tail. Okay?